the 1988 Democratic National Convention address, delivered by the Reverend Jesse Jackson on July 19th of 1988 at the Olney Coliseum in Atlanta, Georgia. Tonight, we pause and give praise and honor to God for being good enough to allow us to be at this place at this time. When I look out at this convention, I see the face of America. Red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. The real Rainbow Coalition. All of us who are here think that they are seated, but we're really standing on someone's shoulders. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Rosa Parks, the mother of the civil rights movement. I want to express my deep love and appreciation for the support my family has given me over these past months. They have endured pain, anxiety, threat, and fear, but they have been strengthened and made secure by our faith in God, in America, and in you. Your love has protected us and made us strong. To my wife Jackie, the foundation of our family. To our 5 children who you have met tonight. To my mother, Miss Helen Jackson, who is present tonight. And to our grandmother, Miss Matilda Burns. To my brother Chuck and his family. To my mother-in-law, Miss Gertrude Brown, who just last month at the age 61 graduated from Hampton Institute. A marvelous achievement. I offer my appreciation to Mayor Andrew Young, who has provided such gracious hospitality to all of us this week. And a special salute for President Jimmy Carter. President Carter restored honor to the White House after Watergate. He gave many of us a special opportunity to grow. For his kind words, for his unwavering commitment to the peace of this world, and for the voters that came from his family, every member of the family, led by Billy and Amy, I offer my special thanks to the Carter family. My rights and my privilege to stand here before you have been won in my lifetime by the blood and the sweat of the innocent. 24 years ago, the late Fannie Lou Hamer and the Aaron Henry, who sits here tonight from Mississippi, were locked out onto the streets in Atlanta, the head of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. But tonight, a black and white delegation from Mississippi is headed by Ed Cole, a black man from Mississippi, 24 years later. Many were lost in the struggle for a right to vote. Jimmy Lee Jackson, a young student, gave his life. Viola Luozo, a white mother from Detroit, called nigger lover. And brains blown out at a black range. Michael Schioner, Andrew Goodman, and James Chaney, 2 Jews and a black, found in a common grave. Bodies riddled with bullets in Mississippi. The 4 darling little girls in a church in Birmingham, Alabama. They died that we have a right to live. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. lies only a few miles from us tonight. Tonight, he must feel good as he looks down upon us. We sit here, a rainbow, a coalition. The sons and daughters of slave masters and the sons and daughters of slaves sitting together around a common table to decide the direction of our party and our coalition and our country. His heart will be full tonight. As a testament to those who struggled, of those who have gone before, as a legacy for those who will come late after, as a tribute to the endurance, the patience, the courage of our forefathers and our mothers, as an assurance that their prayers are being answered, that their work has not been in vain, and that hope is eternal. Tomorrow night, my name will go into the nomination for the presidency of the United States of America. We meet tonight at the crossroads, a point of decision. Shall we expand, be inclusive, authority and power or suffered division and impatience. We've come to Atlanta, the cradle of the Old South, the crucible of the New South. Tonight, there is a sense of celebration because we are moved, fundamentally moved from racial backgrounds and the battlegrounds by law to economic common ground. Tomorrow, we'll challenge to move to a higher ground. Common ground. Sink of Jerusalem, the intersection where many trails have met. A small village that becomes the birthplace for three great religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Why was this village blessed? Because it would provided a crossroads where people from different cultures met. Different civilizations could meet and find common ground. When people came together, flowers always flourish. The air is rich with the aroma of a new spring. Take New York, the dynamic metropolis. What makes New York so special? It's the invitation at the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, and here's the brave free. Not restricted to English only. Many people, many cultures, many languages with one thing in common. They yearn to breathe free. Common ground! Tonight in Atlanta, for the first time in this century, we convene in the South. A state where governors once stood at schoolhouse doors, where Julian Bond was denied a seat in the state legislature because of his conscious objection to the Vietnam War. A city that, through its 5 black universities, has graduated more black students than anywhere else in any other city in the world. Now a modern intersection of the New South. Common ground, that's the challenge our party tonight. Left wing, right wing. Progress will not come through boundless liberalism nor static conservatism, but at the critical mass of the mutual survival, not at boundless liberalism nor static conversationalism, but at the critical mass of mutual survival. It takes 2 wings to fly. Whether you're a hawk or a dove, you're just a bird living in the same environment, in the same world. The Bible teaches us that the lions and lambs lie down together. None will be afraid, and there will be peace in the valley. It sounds impossible. Lions eat lambs. Lambs sensibly flee from lions. Yet even lions and lambs find common ground. Why? Because neither lion nor lambs want the forest to catch on fire. Neither lions nor lambs want acid rain to fall. Neither lions nor lambs can survive nuclear war. If lions and lambs can find common ground, surely we can as well, as civilized people. The only time we win is when we come together. In 1960, the late John Kennedy, beat Richard Nixon by only 112,000 votes. This is 1% per precinct. He won by the margin of hope. He brought us together. He reached out. He had the courage to defy his advisors and inquire about Dr. King's jailing in Alabama and Albany, Georgia. We won by the margin of hope, inspired by courageous leadership. In 1964, Lyndon Johnson brought both wings together, the thesis, the antithesis, and the creative synthesis, and together we won. In 1976, Jimmy Carter unified us again, and we won. When we do not come together, we do not win. In 1968, the division and despair in July led to our defeat in November. In 1980, rancor in the spring and the summer led to Reagan in the fall. When we divide, we cannot win. We must find common ground for the basis for survival and development and change and growth. Today, when we debated, differed, deliberated, agreed to agree, agreed to disagree, when we had the good judgment to argue a case, then not to self-destruct, George Bush was just a little farther away from the White House and a little closer to his private life. Tonight, I salute Governor Michael Dukakis. He has run a well-managed and dignified campaign. No matter how tired or how tired, he always resisted the temptation to stoop to a demogiancy. I watched the good mind fast at work, with steel nerves guiding his campaign out of the crowded field without the appeal to the worst in us. I watched his perspective grow as his environment has expanded. I've seen his toughness and his tenacity close up. I know his commitment to the public service. Mike Dukakis' parents were a doctor and a teacher. My parents, a maid, a beautician, and a janitor. There is a great gap between Brookline, Massachusetts, and Haney Street in the Field Crest Village housing projects in Greenville, South Carolina. He studied law. I studied theology. There are differences of religion, region, and race, differences in experiences and perspectives. But the genius of America is that only we may become one. Providence has enabled our paths to intersect. His foreparents came to America on the immigrant ships. My foreparents came to America on slave ships. But whatever the original ships, we're in the same boat tonight. Our ships could pass in the night. If we had a false sense of independence, or they could collide and crash, we could lose our passengers. We could seek a higher reality and a greater good. Apart, we can drift off on the broken pieces of Reaganomics, satisfy our best interests and our baser instincts, and exploit the fears of our people. At our highest, we can call upon noble investigates and noble instincts and navigate this vessel to safety. The greater good is the common good. As Jesus said, "Not my will, but thine be done." It was his way of saying there's a higher good beyond personal comfort or position. The good of our nation is at stake. Its commitment to working men and women, to the poor and the vulnerable, to the many people in the world. With so many so much misguided leaderships, the stakes are exceedingly high. Our choice, full participation in a democratic government, or more abandonment and neglect. And so this night, we choose not a false sense of independence, not our capacity to survive and endure. Tonight, we choose interdependency and our capacity to act and unite for the greater good. Common ground and common good is finding commitment to new priorities, to expansion and the inclusion. A commitment to the expanded participation in the Democratic Party at every level. A commitment to a shared national campaign strategy and involvement at every level. A commitment to new priorities, that the issues that hope will be kept alive. A common ground commitment to a legislative agenda for the environment, for the John Convere's bill, universal, on site, same-day registration everywhere. A commitment to DC statehood and empowerment. DC deserves statehood. A commitment to economic set-asides. Commitment to the Dellums bill for comprehensive actions against South Africa. A shared commitment to a common direction. Common ground. Easier said than done. Where do you find your common ground? At the point of challenge. This campaign has shown that politics are not only marketed by politicians, packaged by pollsters and pundits. Politics can be a moral arena where people come together to find common ground. We find common ground at the plant gate that closes on workers without notice. We find common ground at the farm auction where a good farmer loses his or her lands to bad loans or diminishing markets. Common ground at the schoolyard where teachers cannot get adequate pay and the students cannot get a scholarship and can't make a loan. Common ground at the hospital admitting room where somebody tonight is dying because they cannot afford to go upstairs to a bed that's empty waiting for someone with insurance to get sick. We are a better nation than that. We must do better. Common ground. What if leadership is not present hope at a time of crisis? And so I met you at the point of challenge in Maine, where paper workers were striking for fair wages, in Greenville, Iowa, where family farmers struggle for a fair price, in Cleveland, Ohio, where working women seek comparable worth, in McFarland and Farland, California, where the children of Hispanic farm workers may be dying from the poisoned land, dying in the clusters with cancer, and an AIDS hospice in Houston, Texas, where the sick support one another, too often rejected by their own parents and friends. Common ground. America is not a blanket woven from one thread, one color, one cloth. When I was a child growing up in Greenville, South Carolina, and grandmama could not afford a blanket, she didn't complain and we did not freeze. Instead, she took pieces of old cloth, patches, wool, silk, garbadine, carcasac, only patches, barely good enough to wipe off your shoes with, but they didn't stay that way that very long. With sturdy hands and a strong core, she sewed them together into a quilt, a thing of beauty and power and culture. Now, Democrats, we must build such a quilt. Farmers, you seek fair prices, and you are right, but you cannot stand alone. Your patch is not big enough. Workers, you fight for fair wages. You are right, but your patch labor is not big enough. Women, you seek comparable worth and pay equity. You are right, but your patch is not big enough. Women, mothers who seek Head Start and daycare and prenatal care on the front side of life, relevant jail care and welfare on the back side of life. You are right, but your patch is not big enough. Students who seek scholarships. You are right, but our patch is not big enough. Gays and lesbians, when you fight against discrimination and for a cure for AIDS, you are right, but your patch is not big enough. Conservatives and progressives, when you fight for what you believe, right wing, left wing, hawk, dove, you are right from your point of view, but your point of view is not enough. But don't despair. Be as wise as my grandmama. Pull the patches and the pieces together, bound down by the common thread. When we form a great quilt of unity and common ground, we'll have the power to bring about healthcare and housing and jobs and education and hope to our nation. We, the people, can win. We stand at the end of a long dark night of reaction. We stand tonight united in a commitment to a new direction. For almost 8 years, we've been led by those who view social good coming from private interests, who view public life as a means to increase private wealth. They have been prepared to sacrifice the common good of the many to satisfy the private interests and the wealth of a few. We believe in the government that's a tool of our democracy in service to the public, not an instrument of the aristocracy in search of a private wealth. We believe in a government with the consent of the governed, of, for, and by the people. We must now emerge into a new day with a new direction, Reaganomics, based on the belief that the rich had too much money, too little money, and the poor had too much. That's classic Reaganomics. They believed that the poor had too much money and the rich had too little money, so they engaged in reverse Robin Hood. Took from the poor, gave to the rich, paid for by the middle class. We cannot stand 4 more years of Reaganomics in any version, in any disguise. How do I document that case? 7 years later, the richest 1% of our society pays 20% less in taxes. The poorest 10% pay 20% more. Reaganomics. Reagan gave the rich and powerful multi-billion-dollar party. Now the party is over. He expects the people to pay for damage. I take this principal position, convention. Let us not raise taxes on the poor and the middle class, but those who have the party, the rich and the powerful, must pay for the party. I just want to take common sense to high places. We're spending $150 billion to a year defending Europe and Japan 43 years after the war is over. We have more troops in Europe tonight than we had 7 years ago, yet the threat of war is ever more remote. Germany and Japan now are creditor nations. That means they got a surplus. We are a debater nation. It means we are in debt. Let them share more of the burden of their own defense. Use some of that money to build decent housing. Use some of that money to educate our children. Use some of that money for long-term healthcare. Use some of that money to wipe out those slums and put America back to work. I just want to take common sense to high places. If we can bail out Europe and Japan, if we can bail out Continental Bank and Chrysler and Mr. Iacona, make $8,000 an hour, we can bail out the family farmer. I just want to make common sense. It does not make sense to close down 650,000 family farms in this country while importing food from abroad and subsidized by the US government. Let's make sense. It does not make sense to escorting all of our tankers up and down the Persian Gulf, paying $2.5 for every $1 worth of oil we bring out, while oil wells are capped in Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. I just want to make sense. Leadership must meet the moral challenge of its day. What's the moral challenge of our day? We have public accommodations. We have the right to vote. We have open housing. What's the fundamental challenge of our day? It is to end economic violence. Plants closings without notice. Economic violence. Even the greedy do not profit long from greed. Economic violence. More poor people are not lazy. They are not black. They are not brown. They are mostly white and female and young. But whether white, black, or brown, a hungry baby's belly turned inside out is the same color. Color it plain, color it hurt, color it agony. Most poor people are not on welfare. Some of them are illiterate and can't read the want ad sections. And when they can't find a job that matches their dress. They work hard every day. I know. I live amongst them. I'm one of them. I know they work. I'm a witness. They catch the early bus. They work every day. They raise other people's children. They work every day. They clean the streets. They work every day. They drive dangerous cabs. They work every day. They change the beds you slept in these hotels last night and can't get a union contract. They work every day. No, they are not lazy. Someone must defend them because it is right, and they cannot speak for themselves. They work in hospitals. I know they do. They wipe the body of those who are sick with fever and pain. They empty their bedpans. They clean out their commodos, and our job is beneath them. And yet when they get sick, they cannot lie in the bed that they made up every day. America, that is not right. We are a better nation than that. We are a better nation than that. We need a real war on drugs. You can't just say no. It's deeper than that. You can't just get a palm reader or an astrologer. It's more profounder than that. We are spending $150 billion on drugs a year. We've gone from ignoring it to focusing on the children. Children cannot buy $150 billion worth of drugs a year. A few high-profile athletes. Athletes are not laundering $150 billion a year. Bankers are. I met the children in walks, who unfortunately, in their despair, the graves of hope have become raisins of despair, and they're turning on each other, and they're self-destructing. But I stayed with them all night long. I wanted to hear their case. They said, Jesse Jackson, as you challenge us to say no to drugs, you're right. And to not sell them, you're right. And not use these guns, you're right. And by the way, the promise of the CETA, Comprehensive Employment and Training Act, they displaced CETA. They did not replace CETA. We have neither jobs, nor houses, nor services, nor training. No way out. Some of us take drugs as anesthesia for our pain. Some take drugs as a way of pleasure. A good short-term pleasure and long-term pain. Some sell drugs to make money. It's wrong, but you need to know what we know. We can go and buy the drugs by the boxes at the ports, but if we can buy the drugs at the port, don't you believe the federal government can stop if they want to do so? They say, we don't have the Saturday night specials anymore. They say, we buy AK-47s and Uzis, so they just make weapons. We buy them across along these boulevards. You cannot fight a war on drugs until you're going to challenge the bankers and the gun sellers and those who grow them. Don't just focus on the children. Let's stop drugs at the level of supply and demand. We must end the scourge on the American culture. Leadership. What difference fully make. Leadership cannot just go along and to get along. We must do more than change presidents. We must change direction. Leadership must face the moral challenge of our day. The nuclear war buildup is irrational. Strong leadership cannot desire to look tough and let that stand in the way of the pursuit of peace. Leadership must reverse the arms race. At least we should pledge no first use. Why? Because first use begets first retaliation, and that's mutual annihilation. And that's not a rational way out. No use at all. Let's think it out and let's not fight it out of our day. The nuclear war buildup is irrational. Strong leadership cannot desire to look tough and let that stand in the way of the pursuit of peace. Leadership must reverse the arms race. At least we should pledge no first use at all. Let's think it out. Let's give peace a chance. Leadership. We now have this marvelous opportunity to have a breakthrough with the Soviets. Last year, 200,000 Americans visited the Soviet Union. There's a chance for joint ventures into space. Not Star Wars and war arms escalation, but a space defensive initiative. Let's build into space together and demilitarize the heavens. There is a way out. America, let us expand. Where Mr. Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev met, there was a big meeting. They represented together 1/8 of the human race. 7/8 of the human race was locked into that room. Most people in the world tonight, half are Asian, 1/2 of them are Chinese. There are 22 nations in the Middle East. There's Europe. 40 million Latin Americans next door to us, like Caribbean, Africa. 500 million people. Most people in the world today are either yellow or brown or black, non-Christian, poor, female, young, and don't speak English in the real world. This generation must offer leadership to the real world. We're losing ground in Latin America, Middle East, South Africa, because we're not focusing on the real world. That's the real world. We must use the basic principles, support the international law. We stand the most to gain from it. Support human rights. We believe in that. Suppose the self-determination. We're built on that. Support economic development. You know it, right? Be consistent and gain our moral authority in the world. I challenge you tonight, my friends. Let's be bigger and better as a nation and as a party. We have basic challenges. Freedom in South Africa. We've already agreed as Democrats to declare South Africa to be a terrorist state. But don't just stop there. Get South Africa out of Angola. Free Namibia. Support the frontline states. We must have a new humane rights consistent policy in Africa. I'm often asked, Jesse, why do you take on these tough issues? They're not very political. We can't win that way. If an issue is morally right, it will eventually be political. I may be political and never be right. Fannie Lou Hamer didn't have many votes in Atlantic City, but her principles had outlasted every delegate who all voted to lock her out. Rosa Parks did not have the most votes, but she was morally right. Dr. King didn't have the most votes about the Vietnam War, but he was morally right. It was our principles first. Our politics will fall in place. Jesse, why do you take these big whole initiatives, a poem by an unknown author, when something like this? We mastered the air, we conquered the sea, annihilated distance and prolonged life, but we're not wise enough to live on this earth without war and without haste. As for Jesse Jackson, I'm tired of sailing my little boat. Far inside the harbor bar, I want to go out where the big ships float, out on the deep where the great ones are, and should my frail craft prove too slight for waves that sweep those billows o'er, I'd rather go down in the stirring fight than drown to death at the sheltered shore. We've got to go out, my friends, where the big boats are. And then for our children, young America, hold your head high now. We can win. We must not lose you to drugs and violence, premature pregnancy, suicide, cynicism, pessimism, and despair. We can win. Whether you are tonight, I challenge you to hope and to dream. Don't submerge your dreams. Exercise above all, even on drugs. Dream of the day you are drug-free. Even in the gutter, dream of the day that you will be up on your feet again. You must never stop dreaming. Face reality, yes, but don't stop the way things are. The dream of things as they ought to be. Dream, face pain, but love, hope, faith, and dreams will help you to rise above the pain. Use hope and imagination as weapons of survival and progress. But you keep on dreaming, young America. Dream of peace. Peace is rational and reasonable. War is irrational, thick in this age, and unwinnable. Dream of teachers who teach for life and not for a living. Dream of doctors who are concerned more about public health than private wealth. Dream of lawyers more concerned about justice than a judgeship. Dream of preachers who are more concerned and more about prophecy than profiteering. Dream on the high road with sound values. And then America, as we go forth to September, October, November, and then beyond, America must never surrender to a high moral challenge. Do not surrender to drugs. The best drug policy is first, no use. Don't surrender with needles and sedatives. They have no first use on the one hand or the clinics or the other. Never surrender, young America. Go forward! America must never surrender to malnutrition. We can't feed the hungry and the clothed, the naked. We must never surrender. We must go forward. We must never surrender illiteracy. Invest in our children. Never surrender and go forward. We must never surrender to inequality. Women cannot compromise ERA or comparable work. Women are making 60 cents to $1 to what a man makes. Women cannot buy meat cheaper. Women cannot buy bread cheaper. Women cannot buy milk cheaper. Women deserve to get paid for the work that you do. It's right. And it's fair. Don't surrender, my friends. Those who have AIDS tonight, you deserve our compassion. Even with AIDS, you must not surrender. In your wheelchairs, I see you sitting here tonight. In those wheelchairs, I stayed with you. I reached out to you across our nation. And don't you give up. I know it's tough sometimes. People look down on you. It took you a little more effort to get here tonight. And no one should look down on you. But sometimes mean people do. The only justification we have for looking down on someone is that we're going to stop and pick them up. But even in your wheelchairs, don't you give up. We cannot forget 50 years ago when our backs were against the wall, Roosevelt was in a wheelchair. I'd rather have a Roosevelt in a wheelchair than Reagan and Bush on a horse. Don't you surrender and don't you give up. Don't surrender and don't give up. Why I cannot challenge you this way? Jesse Jackson, you don't understand my situation. You being on television, you don't understand. I see you with big people. You don't understand my situation. I understand. You see me on TV, but you don't know me, and that makes me, me. They wonder, why does Jesse run? Because they see me running for the White House. They don't see the house I'm running from. I have a story. I wasn't always on television. Writers were not always outside my door. When I was born late one afternoon, October 8th, in Greenville, South Carolina, no writers asked my mother her name. Nobody chose to write down her address. My mama was not supposed to make it, and I was not supposed to make it. You see, I was born of a teenage mother, who was born of a teenage mother. I understand. I know abandonment and people being mean to you, and saying you're nothing and nobody and can never be anything. I understand. Jesse Jackson is my surname. I'm adopted. When I had no name, my grandmother gave me her name. My name was Jessie Burns till I was 12, so I wouldn't have a blank space. She gave me a name to hold me over. I understand when nobody knows your name. I understand when you have no name. I understand. I wasn't born in the hospital. Mama didn't have insurance. I was born in the bed at the house. I really do understand. Born in a 3-room house, bathroom in the backyard, slough jar by the bed. No hot and cold running water. I understand. Wallpaper used for decoration? No. For a windbreaker, I understand. I'm a working person's person. That's why I understand you, whether you're black or white. I understand work. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had a shovel programmed for my hand. My mother A working woman, so many days she went to work early with runs in her stockings. She knew better, but she wore runs in her stockings so that my brother and I could have matching socks and not be laughed at school. I understand. At 3 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day, we couldn't eat turkey because Mama was preparing somebody else's turkey at 3 o'clock. We had to play football to entertain ourselves. And then around 6 o'clock, she would get off the Alta Vista bus and we would bring up on the leftovers and eat our turkey. Leftover, the carcass, the cranberries around 8 o'clock at night. I really do understand. Every one of these funny labels they put on you, those of you who are watching this broadcast tonight in the projects on the corners, I understand. Calling you outcast, low down. You can't make it. You're nothing. You're from nobody. Subclass, underclass. When you see Jesse Jackson, when my name goes in nomination, your name goes in nomination. I was born in the slum, but the slum was not born in me, and it wasn't born in you, and you can make it. Wherever you are tonight, you can make it. Hold your head high, stick out your chest. You can make it. It gets dark sometimes, but the morning comes. Don't you surrender. Suffering breeds character. Character breeds faith. In the end, faith will not disappoint. You must not surrender. You may or may not get there, but you just know what you're qualified. And you hold on and hold out. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Hold tomorrow not and beyond. Keep hope alive. I love you very much. I love you very much. Thank you very, very much.